Hey, good afternoon.
Hello.
Hi. So, you were right this morning when you warned everybody not buy into this gap up.
It made very little sense. I mean, I don't know if I would say confused as much as it didn't make sense. I don't know if that's necessarily the same thing as much as confused means you don't have a structure for it. Doesn't make sense means you do have a structure and it's not even close to making sense.
Right,
I don't
right.
know how else to word that.
Well, I think there was a disconnect, right? Is
Actually,
that what you would
perfect
say?
word. Yep,
Yeah,
that's the perfect word.
yeah. It wasn't, and now not only did it pull in, but we engulfed yesterday's bar too. So now we have a really interesting chart that it just set up.
Well, I know we never want to trade so much off of why because we're trading. We're not really fundamentally picking stuff here other than using a fundamental catalyst to maybe
Right.
like Facebook. Obviously we're going to talk about Facebook today, but and Apple actually a little bit, but
And I think Netflix also.
right, exactly. But just sticking with the market for a second, the gap up this morning just made zero sense. All right, you can understand yesterday's gap. You can understand or maybe even not understand, but definitely say, okay, we closed strong. I get it. But then another gap this morning,
Right.
definitely.
Well, when we had a gap and a follow through yesterday, and then we gapped again.
Yeah, and like I guess you got to add the full picture was the close on the lows prior to the 3 day weekend, or pretty near the low.
Right.
So do we have now we have 10 gaps in 14 days. Do we gap lower now tomorrow with how
Right.
strong today's selling was?
Right. Is this the new normal?
It's pretty bizarre. I will say that. So I guess we'll give a little perspective on, again, you can go to the blog and tradingeducationblogs.com. You can either scroll down and grab it here on the front page or shoot over to the blog. So we're going to just basically take a look at, see what we're looking at. So in case you haven't visited the blog yet, there's a whole bunch of stuff here, the heat map of yesterday, but this is really what I want to focus on just to give a little clarity to what Marion had just said there. This is how I felt going into the day. I mean, other than the SPY set to open at the 20-period moving average, which that open meant that we were gapping again, which is another gap high. We're also working on a second inside week in a row, and I kind of threw the FOMC thing in there. I don't know how significant it is into next week, but I kind of think it is. There's massive indecision. We had buying across the board yesterday and selling across the board today. How could you describe it as anything other than indecision?
Right. Right. Exactly.
So as far as the heat map, we'll discuss that kind of quick. And actually, I just noticed yesterday, Marion, I had yesterday as Monday, so I guess I was still in holiday mode. I caught it tonight. And I'm like, oh, yesterday was not Monday. So anyway, this was the heat map that we were looking at coming into the day. Which look, you understand there's days like this, but what was really messed up, or that threw a lot of models, price action models out of the gate, was where we were this morning. And how we closed strong yesterday, and you can definitely justify saying maybe open flat or a little bit higher, but another 200-point gap up in the Dow, and you can see here clearly we actually opened up almost exactly at that spot, which was the 20 EMA, which coincided with resistance over here. That's what we were looking at pre-market, and no matter what Facebook group, trading room, or anything along those lines that you're in this morning, pretty much everybody was really bullish 2 days ago to like, wow, I don't know about you, how many blog posts did you read this morning about have we found a bottom?
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
So I guess the answer is no. you
Well,
know, so
I
here's
think we even discussed this earlier, and we said, "What? Why could we have? Can you give me? What reasoning can you give that all of a sudden everything has improved dramatically?"
yep. And again, we spend a lot of time talking about it in the not only the pre-market meeting because that's really was setting up the trades, but then when we're in the live trading room, the whole justification for putting a trade on is give me an argument for long or short bias, and it would be really hard to have said, yeah, I fully expected us to gap higher, and I'm getting long again because the bottom's in. There was no argument for it.
Right. Right. Exactly.
So coming into the day, morning call, we had afternoon strength into a gap higher, which was the gap higher this morning, obviously. Actually, gap higher into afternoon strength yesterday, and then a gap higher today. We just called out the 20 EMA and 199.84 resistance, which if you take a look on the chart here, that's essentially what we drew here. So the high of this candle here was the 199.84. Tough to justify a long after a second gap, which was this morning. So again, this is the pre-market call. So look, I'm very rarely in this kind of mode. So it was non-committal on making an opening call, and I love to make opening calls. I'd love to call and predict the first 90 minutes. Did not have one this morning. Everybody that I was speaking to, text messaging, Voxering, whatever it happened to be this morning, day trading mode. I had no other way to word it. There's no other way. And we went over it again. Trade the opening price, trade the current hour, pick lower time frames, and just realized that the bigger picture. Look, I'm not going to say broken. It's just indecisive. Broken means you're all over. We're just indecisive. You can't go from one day where it's the bottom's in and everything's beautiful. I told you so. To the next day, 90% of Wall Street closes on the lows.
Right, exactly.
So here's what we ended up unfolding today. Obviously, that's the SPY. We hit the resistance perfectly here. We went through the moving average just a little bit, but you can see here pretty much never really gave it up. We found, we spent a lot of time in this area here in the first few hours of the day. We said, okay, if we're going to find a bottom, this is where it would be because this was the high of the previous day. So usually, best practices, the previous day's high or low should be the first spot to find support if you're pulling back into it. And we kind of floated around there. It actually held up and actually perked up a little bit, but just gave it up big time in the afternoon, which is exactly opposite of what it did yesterday, which is what makes it that much more bizarre.
Right, exactly.
I don't know if there's a better word for it. 11 o'clock, 11:30, we're talking about, okay, financials are rolling over. They're giving it up. Energy is now starting to give it up a little bit. I guess we'll take a look at a few of those. But this is the Dow, just to give everybody some perspective. Right across the board, this is from the net, previous close. This is from today's open. So not, once in a while you find a discrepancy here where it's not in sync. But today we actually had a massive amount of the market that was negative from the previous close and negative from the open. And that's actually what it ended up looking at. Now, again, the one bright spot, again, this heat map is the size of the box is the market cap. Google L, you said this morning, finally broke out of a pennant. We'll take a look at that. But the Facebook was interesting. Held up and did not actually get crushed with the rest of the market. So we always run scans now on now the market was weak today. So tonight into tomorrow, we'll run scans on which stocks were up 2%. With the market getting crushed, so that again, and we were big on this morning too, Marion. We said, look, you might not need this list of stocks that were relatively weak to the market yesterday, but if the market rolls over, you want to go to the stocks that showed weakness when the market was strong, and look what ended up unfolding. Again, if it never happens, big deal. If it does happen, you're prepared. You're not scrambling at 2 o'clock in the afternoon to try and find something to trade.
Right. I think we actually mentioned that twice this morning. So, and kind of bringing up one day last week where the market actually, I think it gapped up 200 and came down then another 300. It was a 500-point move.
Yep. Look, you have to be prepared. We're not saying that you want to be shorting weak stocks when the market's really strong, but if stocks are weak when the market is really strong, there's something wrong with those stocks. There's already selling and they're ignoring the market. So if the market rolls over, you have a list already. And again, if you want to be a prepared trader, if you want to be a trader that makes money with consistency, you have to game plan both sides of the market, especially in a tape like this. Now, you might not need to do that if the overall market is picture perfect up or picture perfect down. We are clearly not in that tape right now. So it's good, professional, prepared trading to have stuff on both sides of the tape. Lo and behold, today they unfolded and you were ready. There's no other way to put it.
And it's also just a good practice to know how to do it also.
Very good point. Absolutely correct. Yep, absolutely. So coming into the day, we have two different lists here we're going to take a look at for now. Stocks to buy and stocks with relative weakness. So this list here, these are the ones that we said here. These stocks were weak, contra to the market being strong yesterday. So this is the list of stocks that we were recommended going to first. But I guess before we get into the bigger list, Marion, you want to go over a few stocks that you were trading and watching today? Let me zoom that out a little bit. I know Netflix news
Now,
today.
Netflix, I think we mentioned in the pre-market meeting that it had some great news out on it. It was expanding into several countries in Asia. Now, on a typical day, when Netflix would announce that this stock would be up $7 before the market even opened, it was having a hard time staying up $1. And I thought that was odd. So actually watching it, because it wasn't doing what we expected it to do today.
And actually, this is a 10-minute chart. You'll notice here the price actually traded lower. If you don't mind, I'm going to zoom it out to a 5 just to show you. It actually traded lower and gave you a chance to get in.
Right.
See that little red candle? It actually opened and pushed lower with all of that goods. Now, granted, it did bounce later, but you had plenty of time. Is relative. We joke around. We're talking about day traders. Oh, it's 5 minutes later. Why hasn't it done it yet? But that's actually an eternity in the morning if you want to get long expecting that to happen.
And when the market weakened, it did, but it still stayed positive. And right now it's closing at trading at 99.25. I actually ended up getting out of it. I'm getting out of everything now because this is a day trading market, and I'm out of my Netflix. But it gave you several signals to get out. Also, so you did not. There was no surprises in this stock today. It was actually great. You could get in, you could add, and you could get out of it.
Now, let me ask you a question, Mary, just for somebody who might be new to the market. What do you mean by it's a day trading market? I agree with you 100%. I actually said on the slide there before, I'm in day trading mode. How would you describe that to somebody? Let's say you're in a room or somebody's listening to this right now, like, wow, this is kind of cool stuff. I'm going to tune in tomorrow. What does that mean to them?
I would say that there's no definitive call on the market because the market is not, it's responding to news. And so we're at the mercy of news overnight.
So there's no bias to the market.
Right. I would say there's no real bias trend to the market upside look at all the wicks we have in there. Look at all the gaps we have. This just keeps gapping up and down. Could this gap up again tomorrow? Yep. Could it gap down? Yes. 50-50. Okay. I'm biased to the short side because we have an engulfing bar tonight, but some kind of Chinese news comes out and we could be back up again. But we could gap down $3 tomorrow.
So think about that. In order for us not to have a gap tomorrow, we'd actually have to trade higher after we got crushed today. And what are the odds of that happening?
Right, exactly.
It's just so weird. But you know what? It's weird, but it's awesome day trading opportunity. We want to make sure we're clear on that. All we're talking about is not having an expectation for follow through because it's a day trading tape. But that does not mean by any stretch of the imagination that was not a great day to day trade.
We had a wonderful day we have had great, amazing days to trade, and even though they have been day trading days, there is plenty of opportunities, and not only that, we've got so much volatility that these stocks move.
So we had obviously the SPY. You could have just stuck with that the entire day. $5 from high to low, which is just an incredible move in the SPY. The average true range is actually a little bit more than that, but I think that's a little exaggerated because of the last 2 weeks, because the ATR is actually run off of, in this case, the default, which is what I keep in there, is 14 days. So essentially the average true range is off of the last 14 days, which, as you can see, it's expanded dramatically at that point. So I guess we'll go over real quick. Actually, you know what? Not real quick. Let's. Netflix is the one that we just looked at in the news, expanding into different areas, and obviously Marion just worded it perfectly. If they go into one different place, they get a huge boost. They went into I don't know, was it 4 today? They announced.
Yeah, it was just amazing that we didn't get any follow through on that in the morning, but then we did right away, and you got $5 out of this stock easily, almost $6.
And then Facebook, I know you spoke about that this morning. It's been having a hard time with the 91.22 level, 91.25. So you can see we kind of pushed through there quickly. And for most of the day, we actually were very comfortably above the opening price. And again, that's our big harbinger of intraday order flow. If you have a chance, make sure if you're not sure about that, and you want to get a better feel for that, just go to the homepage and download that free report. You can get it right here. That's one of the things we're talking about, so you get a better idea of what we're talking about. But it gave it up with the rest of the market. But I will tell you this, even though Facebook closed on the lows or at or near the lows today with the rest of the tape, I actually like the Facebook picture today. I think that we could just draw a line. This has been the level we haven't been able to get through. We got through it, pulled back to it a couple of times, held it perfectly. Other than the market coming in hard today, I don't think the stock would have come in if the market didn't. So I actually kind of like the stock now to start making a run above this 50-period moving average, even though the moving averages are both sideways here, and there's clearly no bias based on the moving averages. I think that there was some pretty good news out. I think the stock reacted to the good news, and I actually am a little bit more bullish on the stock than I probably was about 5 days ago. What about you?
Yeah, I totally agree. Absolutely. We've been watching and waiting for it to break through these levels, and it did it. And it held in today, which I was really impressed with.
So again, the other big one today with news is Apple.
Right.
Which everybody, we keep it in our radar every single day just for the fact that it has good liquidity and good average true range. And again, you know what? $100 stock is actually pretty reasonable too to throw that into the mix. So you're not chewing up a ton of buying power. It's got good liquidity on a daily basis and good average true range on a daily basis. And if you're not sure what average true range means, it essentially means what's the average of the high to the low, and that tells you the amount of available opportunity that a stock normally has. So as a trader, you want to balance risk, which is liquidity, meaning how many shares it trades on a daily basis and how consistent those shares trade with how much it can move. And every trader has a certain balance of that liquidity versus opportunity. You don't want to trade stocks that don't move too much because, yeah, you won't lose any money, but you also won't make any money. But you have to venture out of your comfort zone just a little bit to trade something that could move that you have a chance to make money in. This is a great stock to do that in. Now, we sold off a little bit, caught a pretty big bid. Now, the question is, did Apple sell off with the market because of the market, or did Apple sell off because of everything that was going on in the news today wasn't earth-shattering?
I think it could be a little of each. I was watching Apple as first Tim Cook and then the rest of the entourage was speaking, and it was reacting to what they were saying. But I don't think anything was absolutely earth-shattering. I think people wanted more than they got out of it. I just think it's totally different than when Steve Jobs used to hold them.
So I just want to give everybody an understanding of what we're talking about, Marion, too. So if you want to get a little bit more detail, I don't mean to cut you off there.
Oh, no.
This was written about in the blog today by Marion, just to give you an idea of why we're talking about Apple's in the news today. So you can take a quick look here about talk about the iPhone 6 and that kind of stuff. So this was actually a big deal today, and that was why the stock was in play, which, by the way, Marion, very nice picture there today. So anyway, that Apple was pretty good in play today. But again, we're getting a lot of these engulfing type candles. But you need to put these pure technical patterns in the context of there's some news going on. There's no big longer term bias. Remember, and this is a very important concept, reversal candles, engulfing candles, though, that type of terminology where you're essentially calling a reversal. I mean, there's no other way to put it. Obviously, reversal candle is a reversal candle, but an engulfing candle is implying it's engulfing the previous candle like this one is, and it's reversing. There is no trend here that it's reversing from. So I'm taking a long term to say that an engulfing pattern matters more when it's reversing from something. There's no trend here for the last 10 days. So it's not like it went up for 10 days and it engulfed and came down, and went down for 10 days and engulfed and went back up. So just keep that in mind. It is powerful. It absolutely matters, but it matters more when it's after a move like this. Like we came down for like 6, 7, 8 days. That engulfed and turned around. That mattered more. Just to I try to give lessons while we're doing it because we just don't want to talk at everybody.
That's great. I really do. Yeah, and that totally makes sense.
It means more when it's actually reversing from something. Actually, I can go back to what we're looking at Facebook. Moving averages don't matter if they're not sloping. William actually had mentioned it this morning. I forgot what stock it was. It really doesn't matter. But whatever the stock was, there really wasn't a trend or a slope to the moving averages. So price being below or price being above a flat slope doesn't mean anything. I guess that was like jumbo shrimp. There is no such thing as a flat slope. When they're not sloping, it doesn't mean as much if it's above or below. So just be very conscious if you're using moving averages that if you're going to use it as a reference point, it matters whether or not there's a slope to it. So right now there isn't. Okay. So I guess we covered Facebook, we covered Netflix, we covered Apple, we covered the SPY. You want to get into the energy stocks, I guess, a little bit, Mary? They kind of rolled over the energy.
I think we were really watching those this morning to see if they were going to give it up.
And it looked like they weren't going to. However, this kind of confused again because over here this was like really solid bullish 3 closes on the high, gets to the 20 EMA, and you're expecting them, boom, we roll back down and test the lows. And we kind of went into a trading range. And I remember saying this morning, I'm like, what's going on? They should have rolled over. They didn't roll over. And then we open up and we actually go higher. And now I'm really confused. I'm like, what, why? But, within a half an hour, 45 minutes, we actually started to roll over again pretty quickly. And then it was, pretty much off to the races at that point to the downside. But energy gave it up today. Financials gave it up today. So, we'll stick with these guys first. Pretty good high to low. Walmart, so a little bit of retail, really clean move to the downside. And another one of those, pretty clear engulfing candles there. Goldman Sachs was relatively strong out of the gate, followed through cleanly yesterday. This is, again, you want to talk about the opening price. You think that doesn't matter? Look at that. Closes below it, can't get back above it, tries, can't, sells off, bounces back, gets right back to the opening price again. Gosh, I really hope that everybody's starting to add that. It's usually a setting on your chart. It is really powerful, not only for stuff like this with a signal, but also is it above it or below it? And then is it above it or below it in sync with the longer term picture? And is it in sync with the net close? You start to get a really, really good, clean idea of whether or not you should be long or short. So that's financials, that's energy. I guess we can go over really quick. We didn't have that much on the long side today, just a handful. This LB has been strong for a while. I know INCY and Post as well. We'll just take a look at how they were trading in the morning. LB has been up phenomenally over, was it like the last 3 weeks, all green candles? Yeah. Look at that.
Yeah, it's really been strong, real relative strength. Didn't matter what the rest of the market was doing.
Yep, so we opened higher this morning, just got up to this resistance level. Look at this. I don't have a change of opinion on this stock. I think that it's still pretty good. Probably just needs a couple of days to consolidate. So the market pullback is not really a big deal. If we use a Fibonacci level, 93 down to 75, what is that, 18?
Right.
So half of 18 is 9, just doing a 50% retracement. So 75 and 9 is 84. So right around the 50-period moving average should be where the stock pulls back to. So just to give you guys an idea of where to set up a target to look for the next long in LB. What was it? INCY was another one that we had on the long list this morning. And let me zoom out a little bit wide just so you could see. You can see it's taking out 52-week highs here. And actually printed above it today, right at it, but didn't get through. But you can see why it's in the long list. POST as well. And again, I have to zoom out here just so you can see why. That's why it took out 52-week highs again. Only 800,000 shares, might be a little bit thin for a day trade, but again, we want to really stress setting up great ideas coming into the day, and that's why. On the short side, we had some of the stocks that had relative weakness to the SPY being strong, so we could take a look at a couple of those. Did you have any other stocks on the long side you want to take a look at before we slide over?
No, I'm just going over my list. We didn't have anything. Remember, even we said this morning, there wasn't a lot that we really had on the long side.
Actually,
at resistance.
I think the only comment that we had made this morning was the size of the scans on the short side. The list went from like 200 stocks that you'd have to look through down to like maybe 100. So the size of the list of the stocks in downtrends or short sales diminished dramatically. Some more stocks popped in the long list, but that didn't even necessarily make them longs. It just meant that they weren't below all the key moving averages at that point.
Right. I think we even talked about that. Didn't necessarily make them longs, and they weren't shorts either. We had several of those stocks.
Yep, exactly. So on that list on the stocks that were weak with the strong, BABA, which again got crushed yesterday. So maybe today is just a little bit of an oversold bounce. It actually stayed above the open the entire day, but you can see why it was in the list today as a short sale. So again, sticking with the disconnect factor of the market, you're really on top of your reference points. Baidu is another one. Very similar. You can see it was weak when the market was strong yesterday. That did not roll over either. So we got a few of those. But then if we shift over to the actual short list, you can see GPro and AMBA, Marion, I think were probably the two at the top of our list, and Caterpillar, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll just take a quick look at those.
AMBA and GPro gave us really good trades early on.
Yep. So GPro, we can again. The key here is it was a sell short coming into the day. We were prepared to sell the stock short, even though the market was strong yesterday. And look what happens when you have the right stocks in your list. And again, this is not second guessing. This is right out of the meeting from the morning. It's right from the blog post. This was a weak stock. We gave you the reasons why it was a weak stock. A weak stock in a strong tape, and that's the kind of day you get when you're prepared. The other one was Amber, and I believe we had Amber at 72 was the support, or not 72.
Right. Yep.
Oh, yeah, it was 72.
It was
Actually,
72, I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Yep. So we ended up getting a nice push down again. Lunchtime dances around the opening price. Get a inside candle here to short, and a nice push down into the close for $2. So a lot to do today, a lot to be on top of. Look, it's a tremendous day trading environment if you're prepared the way we're walking you through it. Hopefully you're doing that. If not, you absolutely need to join us in the meeting. It costs $10 for 30 days. Get in there and meet us from 8 o'clock to noon. It's worth every single second you're in there. This is the type of stuff we discuss every day, all day, and we don't let you slide. We discuss why it's a good idea or why it's not a good idea. And again, just getting back into the call for the morning, we're going to be honest with you. If we don't feel like there's a great call, we're going to tell you. We're not going to tell you what we just for the sake of calling stuff out. We want to trade with you so that you could do great trading concepts which translate into you understanding what you're doing. And that's kind of what's fun about it, because I actually had somebody ask me yesterday, Marion, would I prefer to have learned in a bull market that was going straight up every day versus the kind of market that we're in now, because they actually happen to be learning right now. And I'm like, look, clearly from a monetary perspective, it's much easier when the bias is really clear. But you had said it in the meeting this morning, if you could learn how to trade and make money in this market, you are in great shape.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody who's learning right now has so many skills that you really can only get through FIRE. And this is also a great time to make money, and it's just different.
There's stuff to do. If you're prepared, there's stuff to do.
Yep, exactly.
All right, I think we got a good day. I'd be shocked if we don't get another gap tomorrow. If we trade higher into yesterday's range, it'll surprise the heck out of me. That's all I can say. But who knows? Like you said, there's a lot of stuff coming out of the blue, so maybe we'll get something else again. But good day to trade. Awesome, especially if you were prepared. Stuff to do on both sides of the tape, and especially from open to close if you had the right stocks on your list to be selling short today.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, awesome. I will speak to you tomorrow. Have a great night, Mary. Thank you.
Okay, you too, Pete. I'll see you in the morning.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.